This episode of Unscripted is brought to you by Dubby. Dubby is an energy drink that doesn't cause any jitters and gives you a bunch of energy to get all your gaming done, and it energizes me to do Unscripted. So use code Krooked Does Stuff at dubby.gg and you'll get your own Dubby for 10% off, and you can also find a link in the description down below. So thank you, Dubby, for sponsoring this episode, and here's Unscripted. Hello, everyone. I am Krooked, and I do stuff, and this is Unscripted, the series where I take a completely unscripted look at games and give it a 1 through 10 rating. Today, we are playing Marvel's Spider-Man 2. I'm going to go ahead and start a new save for this. I have played quite a bit, but I figure that I should show you the game from a fresh perspective. So there's some story. Can't really skip the cutscenes, I don't think. Maybe. No skipping of the cutscenes.
Be ready.
So, spoilers if you haven't beaten the first game. Harry gets the symbiote in this.
If this doesn't work, take me out.
Pretty intense to tell your dad, if this doesn't work, kill me.
I don't have a lot of time left. I want a chance to say goodbye.
And
I'm not going to lose you.
I will point out that Spider-Man 2 is a lot more
Never let you go.
story-centric than the original Spider-Man game. And the story for it is absolutely spectacular. It's amazing. I haven't been upset by it at all. That being said, there is a lot of story here. If you're just trying to jump into the game and play, you're not going to have the ability to do that. So it also has, two different Spider-Men that you get to play as, both Peter Parker and Miles Morales. And it kind of has the ability to switch between them. Not as seamless as they made it sound originally, but still pretty seamlessly.
Because this is physics class, and physics is awesome. Ever wonder how some insects and birds, reptiles can just run right across the
So, starts off, sand going across,
bathroom?
graphics.
Okay.
Graphics are easy to talk about at this point because the game looks great. It doesn't matter if it's a cinematic or if it's in the gameplay. All the graphics look pretty much the same across the board. Pretty much what you would expect from a modern game with how it does look, because it looks absolutely gorgeous. In the sound, the music sounds great. The sound effects sound great.
I need your help.
It's just really,
Mr. Morales,
really on point.
Is it? Are you sure this isn't something you can handle yourself? I'm sure. Okay.
It's weird that he pretends to not know him when it'd be really easy to be like
Miles, I need this
tutorship stuff, because yeah.
Since I'm gone, I'm gonna get fired. I know, but you gotta see this.
Has a build up, does all Spider-Man-y stuff. I'm amazed by the lack of cameras anywhere in a school, because a lot of places have cameras everywhere. The sounds are on point. The soundtrack is spectacular in it. Graphics are spectacular. Just great. And then it throws you into the action. Granted, we're
Evans already hates me for being
we're pretty far into the game already. It's been about 4 minutes or so of cutscene, but you get to get right in and start swinging. Even though it's on the PlayStation 5 and it has the DualSense controller, you would expect some more trigger response from when you're web slinging, especially because there's such a huge push from Sony to have the adaptive triggers, and there's really not much. It doesn't utilize it basically at all for web slinging. There are points later in the game where it does utilize it, and you have to meet certain pressure points with the triggers in order to make it work, and that's really cool use of it. Other than that, there's not a lot. The haptic feedback of the vibration in the controller, it kicks in pretty well. You can feel it a lot, and like when you're going fast while falling and stuff, you can really feel it. But other than that, there's not a lot of use of the DualSense controller, which is really sad. This is a first-party title, and you'd think Sony would be using every advantage they could with it, considering that's one of the selling points of the PS5. So you get into this big, huge boss battle right from the get-go with one of the classic Spider-Man villains. And when I had first started playing the game, I was hoping that this was kind of a hint as to what was to come in this game. It's really not, which is sad, because a huge portion of this game is very similar to Spider-Man 1, and you're just fighting waves upon waves upon waves of henchmen. The only problem is, henchmen now are stronger than they ever were, and Spider-Man in a lot of ways feels weaker than he ever has. We are going to get to the point where we get to fight some villains here in just a moment, but we have to get through a lot of tutorial first.
Spider-Man, think you can sign for this delivery? It's coming in hot. I'm there.
It's kind of cool how they both refer to each other as Spider-Man and stuff, but they dropped that whole camaraderie pretty quick. So now that we're in the fighting, it's very, very similar to the first Spider-Man. There's some new gameplay mechanics that we're going to see very quickly because it is going to show us that, but this is a majority of the game right here. Yeah, the evacuation of students is kind of weird too, because I had to travel how far to get to this? So, it introduces this new thing where you have abilities based on the gadgets that Pete and Miles have. Or the spider powers, rather, than Miles has. And because of that, it focuses on it really hard. Like, if you're not using your spider powers or gadgets in fights, you're probably losing. Because there's certain enemies that you cannot hit without using those spider powers. They also introduced a new mechanic into the game where you have to parry attacks. And you do get a warning. The enemy will flash yellow and then red and you absolutely have to hit it. If you don't, the enemy just hits you and that's it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You cannot avoid it. It just hurts you. A lot of scripted story events like this. And later on, because this takes about a good 30-40 minutes for the entire opening. Later on, when you are web slinging through the city, when you're doing other tasks, it doesn't feel as fluid as it did in Spider-Man. There's some new movement abilities, such as being able to web glide through the air. It's not going to let me show it off, but the web slinging feels so much less intuitive. I just web slung off of literal nothingness, which would have never happened in the first one. I get that this is a tutorial, but there's nothing above me to web sling off of. And that was one of the things in the game that they were like, oh yeah, you're not going to see any of this in Spider-Man, and then in the sequel, it's something that you see right from the get-go. I feel that there were better ways that they could have done this. Like, you can see there's nothing above me, and yet I'm web slinging off of the nothing. When you're traversing through the city, it doesn't feel nearly as fluid as Spider-Man 1. It feels like they focus too much on the new techniques they wanted to implement rather than what they had already mastered and did really well within the original. It has a lot of very unique problems that the first game didn't have, and it didn't really solve any of the issues that the first game had while creating its own. If you watch the 2023 Game Awards, you'll know that Spider-Man got nominated for 7 different categories, and it didn't win any of them. And having played the game, it's not surprising. I feel like Insomniac almost bit off a little bit more than they could chew with this one. Introduced too much and just kind of made it... It's an experience, and it is a fun game. But there's so much here that they could have improved on without making it really gimmicky, and instead they just kind of made it really gimmicky, just across the board. I've been very, very critical of the mandatory parrying system, because it could have easily been one where you go, yeah, I can parry things, but instead of making it a new mechanic that feels good, it's one where you're forced to do it in every single fight, multiple times. And if you don't do it, basic ground level thugs just end up beating you. Which, you're Spider-Man, you're a superhero, it doesn't feel realistic at all. It's basically creating a weakness for you that exists solely to make it weak. The other side of the gameplay is, with all the new techniques and everything else, combat feels much less fluid and more of, if you don't use this technique, you're not going to win. And it's almost a bit convoluted because of that, because you have to do things in a fight instead of just fighting the way that you want to, whereas you basically got to fight the way that you wanted to in the original Spider-Man. So it doesn't look like I'm going to get to everything this time because this intro takes such a long time, but I can give it a score. Oh. Maybe it's going to show me here. Okay, so I might actually be able to show you the mandatory pairing thing here.
This isn't the way, Marco.
For a guy like me, there is no other way.
Yeah, so it again is like, hey, you have to do this because it's important. Yeah, and it may not. So, anyways, in terms of a score, I would give Spider-Man 2 a solid 7 out of 10. It is a good game, without a doubt, and it is fun to play. It's just, it feels in many ways like it might be a step down from the previous Spider-Man game, which is really disappointing because the original Spider-Man game and its sequel, Miles Morales, were both really, really solid and treaded a lot of new territory for a game that kind of just did the same thing every time. Except this feels like it's going back to the let's be safe about it formula, and none of the new things introduced were worth it. And everything that they could have improved on just didn't get improved on. So it's a lot more of the same, and it introduced so much new that it's not good. But that being said, comment down below. Let me know what you think of Spider-Man or Spider-Man 2. Like this video if you enjoyed what you saw. Hit that subscribe button so that way you never miss out on an episode of Unscripted. And hit that notification bell so that way you'll be notified whenever a new episode of Unscripted does come out. And with all that being said and done, I do want to thank you for watching Unscripted, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye!